Welcome everybody to this World Satsanga held on the 31st of January 2024. And as usual, I encourage you to visit Kevin Moore's YouTube channel, The Kevin Moore Show, where he's continuously investigating new ways in which people connect with the greater reality. On his docu-series, They Call Us Channelers. What I want to discuss today is free will, or the different types of will. And in my discussions with the origin and the source, I've discovered that there are 6 divisions associated with the volumes of sentience that incarnate onto the earth. And these are the human true energetic self, which we sometimes call the higher self or oversoul, or Godhead in Hindu texts, the backfill level of true energetic self, which is a different quality of sentience to the human true energetic self. Again, then there's the animal true energetic self, which again is a drop down in quality of sentience, then the plant true energetic self, the mineral true energetic self, and then the gaseous true energetic self. So if we look at the human true energetic self, that has individual free will, and so do shards, those other divisions of sentience from our souls that allow us to experience things in a parallel way. So we can experience other incarnations by projecting smaller volumes of our sentience into human bodies. And that's essentially what our true energetic self does with us. It projects a smaller volume of sentience. So our true energetic self will potentially project up to 12 souls or smaller aspects of itself into various different locations within the physical universe. And we can do the same thing with another smaller volume of our own sentience. But we tend to project it into the environment that we're in. So, for instance, I'm in the earth environment. So if I had any shards, I would project them into the earth environment. If I was in a different location within the physical universe, maybe a different planet in a different frequency, in a different galaxy, it would be in that particular location as well. Backfill sentience has a temporary level of individualized free will or collective will, basically because they are not usually allowed to have or experience individualized free will. They have temporary because when they come to Earth, they're here to backfill for those individuals who have ascended beyond the need to incarnate in the first 3 frequencies. And so they incarnate in the next level upwards, the 4th frequency level. So they've ascended beyond the need to incarnate here. And specifically, that would happen in this incarnation. So they're backfilling for those individuals who've ascended. The animal true energetic self only has temporary individual free will as well, or collective will. So as with the backfill people, they have individual free will to a certain level within the constraints of their sentience. So we know that certain animals develop a personality and they do things based upon what they're allowed to do. But if they're trained or they're looked after by a human, they tend to work within the collective will of their locale, i.e. within the human's context, or if they're within a pack of animals, they'll work with the collective will there. So their individual free will is usually if they're working with a group of humans in a family setting, for example, and they're allowed to enjoy their incarnation there. Plant will is collective or genus-based will. So based upon that, they will be working in a collective based upon the type of plant or tree or bush or fern, etc., that they are part of. For instance, oak trees would have collective will based upon their genus, although they would still be able to connect with other plants and other trees. They would tend to have a collective level of will that is based upon their genus, in this instance being the oak tree. Similarly, we have the same for mineral will, which is based upon local collective will. So it's even more constrained. And collective will, from our perspective, will be almost non-existent because of the speed at which they operate. But in terms of the way minerals consider things, from a sentient-based perspective, everything is locally derived. So, for example, carbon-based sentience would have one level of localized collective will. Looking at it from the perspective of quartz, that would have another collective based will, and other types of rocks or geology would also have different types of collective will. And then we have the gaseous type of collective will, where they basically have a level of will that is associated with gaseous states of beingness. And gases can be quite diffuse. So they will be in and around an environment such as an atmosphere like us, or in a collective area such as a gaseous nebula in a physical universe environment, for instance, within our galaxy or outside of a galaxy or in a different frequency. There are different levels of understanding what will is or free will is. And although it's worthwhile noting that all the levels will eventually result in a desire to enter into a level of full communion with the origin, those levels of sentience will form other pockets of sentience up until that point. So what is individual free will for all? Well, this means that all aspects of individual sentience, whatever the volume, quality, or density, have fully autonomous free will and responsibility for the thoughts, behaviors, and actions associated with that level of will. This is irrespective of the volume of sentience that they are individualized from. That's basically us. So we have no responsibility to, or the need to conform to, any context or rules of any volume of sentience, including the volume of sentience that they may be individualized from in the fully free will state. So really, we're our own masters in this way, and that means that we can do whatever we want to, good or bad, and the level of maturity of the free will makes us decide to do what is a positive thing rather than a negative thing. The next level of free will is free will for all within the collective. And this means that all aspects of individual sentience, whatever the volume, quality, or density, have autonomous free will within the context of a collective of volumes of sentience that are working together. So this means any function of thought, behavior, and action that results in a decision that will have an effect on the collective in any way, that being beneficial or detrimental, is made with the consideration of that effect and is either adopted, modified to suit the context, or is negated if it falls outside of the context. So the function of free will within the collective is a requirement of being within the collective. So in the event that a volume of sentience finds itself outside of the collective, it no longer functions with free will and goes into a form of stasis until either reintegrated into its original collective or is integrated into another collective where it will adopt the functionality of the collective that adopts it. Okay. Then we have assigned or designated free will within a collective. So this means that within the collective, there are a small number of aspects or volumes of sentience that have free will within the rules or context of the collective. That being, they make the decisions on behalf of the collective that benefit the collective and avoid those that are detrimental to the collective. Within this level of authoritative will is the necessity to ensure that there is no function of the collective that is detrimental to other collectives of the same level of governance. As with free will within a collective, the volume of sentience that benefits from designated free will on behalf of the collective is only functional within the collective. Again, in the event that a volume of this sentience with designated free will finds itself outside of the collective, it no longer functions with free will. It then goes into stasis until either reintegrated into its original collective where it retains its function if the collective desires through the decisions of the volumes of sentience with designated free will, or is integrated into another collective where it will adopt the functionality of the collective that adopts it and wants it to have. In the event that a volume of sentience that doesn't have the designated free will finds itself outside of the collective, it no longer functions and goes into stasis, as with the others, until either reintegrated into its original collective or is integrated into another collective. In this level of functionality, collectives can absorb or integrate with other collective volumes of sentience with the same functionality, provided the volumes of sentience that have assigned or designated free will in the two or more collectives agree the integration is collectively beneficial. Then we have collective will. This is the function of the individual volumes of sentience working as one volume of sentience. The best way to understand this is to consider that each of the individual volumes of sentience within the collective function in a similar way to a synapse in the human brain. Each volume is a microscopic part of the whole. In the event that a volume of sentience finds itself out of the collective, it no longer functions and goes into stasis, which is a common function, until it is either reintegrated into its original collective or it is integrated into another collective. In this level of functionality, collectives can absorb or integrate other volumes of sentience with collective will. The larger volume of sentience, usually, but not always, being the dominant one. Then we have the hive mind will. So hive mind will is similar to a combination of collective will and assigned or designated free will within a collective. The main difference being that there is only one volume of sentience that is assigned or designated with fully individualized free will. However, the free will of this designated volume of sentience is focused upon the perpetuation of the collective and its collective individual status. As such, it resists integration with other collectives. In variance to the insect hive mind, where the function of the individuals is to be as a drone that is focused upon the perpetuation of the collective through service to the hive and its queen or queens, functioning in an integrated and automatic way, because the hive dies if the queen dies. The sentience-based hive mind and its associated will is focused upon the role of the volume of sentience that is designated to have free will, which is used to perpetuate the collective. So in this instance, the function is the reverse. With the sentience-based hive mind, the individual volumes of sentience effectively functions extensions of the volumes of sentience that has designated free will, becoming the volume of sentience rather than just being a part of it or support to it, as in the insect-based hive mind. In the sentience-based hive mind, if the designated volume of sentience no longer exists, another volume of sentience is designated with free will and therefore perpetuates the existence of the collective. It is usual for sentience-based hive minds to rotate the designation of individuals' free will to other volumes of sentience within the collective. However, the volume of sentience that had individual free will designated to it does not retain it and therefore maintains a balance within the collective of one volume of sentience only having designated free will. So let's move on to the questions and answers. Welcome everybody to the first Will Satsanga of 2024, which is at the end of January. And I'm delighted to be able to welcome you all and thank you for the pre-questions, if those of you have asked pre-questions. And thank you for those of you who are going to ask the questions that I have to answer live, so to speak. Let's look at Bill's first. He's got a couple of questions on the Bible. First question is in Matthew 25:34-46. Sounds like a body measurement, doesn't it? Jesus is telling the parable of the king, saying that those who inherit the kingdom prepared for you are those who have done good. The least of these have done unto me and shall go into eternal life. But those who do not shall go away into everlasting punishment. Are you able to discern whether he actually said that? And if so, are we to interpret the threat of everlasting punishment? Such a doctrine seems completely foreign to our source entity. My understanding is it's an interpretation based upon what's been passed down over the years, because the Bible was written about 300 years after the event. When we can't remember what happened last week, let alone 300 years later. But the information is interesting because what it's basically saying is those of you who live right and live by the teachings that I give you will actually ascend beyond the need to incarnate again on the earth or any other part of the physical universe. But if you don't, you have to go back into incarnation again to create a condition where you are again exposed to all the low frequencies associated with the physical universe and get the chance again to live in a more conducive way to be in a high frequency. So that's basically what it's saying. A lot of the information in all the different religious doctrines, Bibles, guidance needs to be looked at in a way which is beyond the physical words, and you have to look beyond that and look in between the words and understand what it means. So this basically means that if you don't think, behave, and act in a high frequency way, you attract karma, and you have to come back to the earth to eradicate the karma, which is what most people are here for. The next part of it is, in fact, the Christian sin salvation model seems completely foreign to our source entity. Well, in effect, sin is karma. It's another way of saying it. It's a way of creating a condition where we're linked to the physical. And so when we are linked to the physical, we have to come back to eradicate that link. So sin is, again, karma. And there's many ways of describing karma in many different ways, in many different languages. And the source recognizes this is one of the ways in which we master incarnation, is to experience the yin and the yang, the high points and the low points, the positives and the negatives. Next part of this from Bill is, what has Source learned about itself regarding mankind's obsession with religious dogma? Does that obsession eventually give way to understandings of a greater reality? What role will churches, synagogues, temples going forwards in the absence of their underlying historical based dogma? Everything that's religious right now is a function of distortion made by individuals, human individuals, who have not been there at the original teaching of the information that allows it to become higher frequency and navigate beyond the need to incarnate. And so a lot of the teachings, although some of them are still relevant, lots of information in the Christianity is still relevant, Islam is still relevant, Judaism is still relevant, but we need to look beyond it and live with it rather than using it as a means of controlling people from a spiritual perspective. Eventually, when we rise above the frequencies, we'll see beyond all of these, shall I say, kindergarten ways of understanding how to ascend whilst incarnate, and we'll start to work on ourselves in a more scientific way, which is also classified as spiritual, so spiritual physical way, which is what some of the yogis still do with some of the different types of yoga, like Kriya Yoga, for example, or Raja Yoga. Okay, so we will move beyond it, but it's not going to be quite now. In fact, a lot of it is causing us problems at the moment, but we won't go into that. Next one's from Marnie, and she says, I want to hear you discuss in some future satsanga the idea of determinism in the multiverse. How does this work? How does determinism play out in this, and how much of it is determined versus random? At which levels do each of these aspects, determination and random actions, unfold, and how can we tap into the guiding principles to engage in following the determined direction, or is this possible? Determinism is basically our understanding of what happens. We think things are predetermined. Well, actually, they're happening so fast. From our perspective, they're happening now. So that means that from our perspective, everything is happening now. There's no start, there's no middle, there's no end. There's no beginning, there's no finish. Everything is now. And that's because we are in a low frequency, and therefore the only way we can process things is in a linear fashion, one thing after another. It's a bit like taking a cine film and looking at each exposure one by one. Whereas when we play them and we see a film, we see them being exposed at a rate of more than 60 per second, and therefore we see them moving without any juddering, without any stopping and starting. And so observing the whole cine film, the whole roll of cine film, is what we would normally do in the energetic. So the start of the cine film and the end of the cine film are observed concurrently. And so that creates a condition where, although things from our perspective happen linearly and therefore appear to be predetermined, there's also an element of randomness as well. But the randomness is also a condition of our understanding rather than what we're experiencing when we're in the energetic. So predeterminism is something that we have to consider because we're low frequency, because we can't understand everything happens concurrently, because when we're in a higher frequencies, things happen so fast that if the question's asked, the answer is given instantaneously. And so there's no predetermined condition because it's instantaneous, it's concurrent. And that's the same with randomness. What appears to be random actually isn't, it's considered. Good, thank you. Next one from Ella. You said incarnation is the fastest way for our higher selves to evolve. I'd like to know more about free will as it relates to collectives versus individual entities. And there's 4 questions here. How many higher selves send souls to incarnate at the lowest gross physical frequencies, which is where we are now, the first 3? Is it like 10% or 100% of them have to do it? There's no known, actually, it's completely, we talk about randomness. it depends upon what they're trying to achieve. We tend to find the collectives are those true energetic cells that are working with entities that are uh, or vehicles, I should say, that are not so complex, such as trees, such as forests, such as sometimes birds, such as sometimes fish, those sorts of things. But we do get the more complicated bodies that are almost human, for example, who do work in a collective fashion. And what I'm seeing here is it's mostly those true energetic cells that are of a different quality of sentience that create the collective based sentient content where the sentience is shared between multiple different bodies rather than one associated with the type of true energetic self and the quality of sentience that we have. So it's not really answerable from that perspective because not all true energetic cells were created with the same quality of sentience. Some of them have got like mineral levels, some of them have got plant levels, some of them have got the backfill people quality of sentience, some of them have got the levels associated with what we call humanity and the other bodies or vehicles that high quality sentience can incarnate into as well. What is the relative rate or efficiency of evolution accrued by a collective of entities with collective versus free will? Individual entities, like human beings with individualized free will. It's interesting, but it's an individual soul will accrue significantly more evolutionary content than a collective would. And I'm feeling here it's almost like the collective gets like 5%ish of the evolutionary content, irrespective of how big the collective is. In fact, the larger the collective, the more diffuse the opportunity for evolution is, because it's shared between those different smaller volumes of sentience within those bodies. So we having, relatively speaking, quite a large volume of sentience, although it's only 2.5% on average of our true energetic self, we would evolve much, much faster. So how long does it take for a collective to ascend from frequency level 3 to 4 when compared to the individual humans who ascend from 3 to 4 as a function of their navigation through the physical and being able to master the physical? I'm being told here, again, it depends upon the number of souls or the splitting of the sentience into the bodies. So if for example, a true energetic self used 100 different bodies as a collective and put in the amount of sentience it could do into those 100 different bodies, then that compared to us, for example, it would be, we would evolve or ascend faster, or about 1,000 times faster, because we are a compact level of quality sentience. So the collective is much slower, and the bigger the collective, the slower it is, because of the diffuse level of sentience within these different vehicles. And number 4, what is the relative amount of evolutionary content derived by a higher self that sends a collective of 1,000 entities making decisions with collective will versus 1,000 individual humans operating with the individualized free will at the same frequency level? Significantly higher. It is so significantly higher for us. If there's 1,000 of us versus a collective of 1,000 entities, it's like comparing a battery operated toy to the mains, to the high voltage in the distribution of electricity around the world. That's the difference in evolutionary content that's accrued by 1,000 versions of us versus a collective of 1,000 entities. We are significantly more powerful in that respect. And I hope that answers the questions. It's not absolute. It wasn't required to be absolute, but it can't be absolute because it's such a difficult thing to grab hold of. Okay, so let's have a look at the set of questions on the chat. This is from Jagdot. Does a walk-in acquire the memories of the body which were collected by a previous soul in that body? Generally, there's a little bit, not much. And if you look at a walk-in, if you look at somebody who's had an accident, for example, and they suddenly change their personality or their memory set or these sorts of things, they accrue an amount of memory set to enable them to navigate through what the body has done previously and what they're expected to do in this time. But they tend to lose the sharp focus of what the previous soul did. So there's a little bit of carryover, but not a lot. And it's quite common for souls to have amnesia as well when they as a function of a walk-in as well. And also obviously the personality change is one of the biggest things, and the change in capability as well. You know, you suddenly find that one soul in the body could play a piano, and next time the person's forgot to play the piano, or all of a sudden he couldn't play a violin, and all of a sudden it's a virtuoso violin player. It just depends on what the soul's brought in and what it needs to have as a bare minimum as carryover from the experiences of the previous soul to allow it to navigate through the incarnation in a relatively seamless way, although it's not seamless. I heard a sage once say that every piece of land has a spiritual entity presiding over it. Is that true? In India, land is worshipped to get the blessings of the presiding spirits before starting a new project. It's another way of saying that there's nature spirits or elementals that are looking after the eco structure of that area, and there'll be multiple. There's a hierarchy of elementals that look after various different things from the flora to the fauna, and make sure everything is in the best state it can be to allow us to use it and evolve. So there are spirits definitely look after various different aspects of land, whether it's fields, whether it's trees, whether it's lakes, whether it's ferns, whether it's bacteria, those sorts of things. They're all there. Next question. 3. All the ghost demons are the ghost demons low frequency spirits? Are they awake or sentient in the energetic, or are they functions generated to perform certain tasks? I've never heard of something called a ghost demon, but I'm imagining you're describing astral spirits or astral entities. They are basically, again, there are levels of energy that have gone through the Darwinian evolutionary path and created a certain level of intelligence and ability to be able to take energy from the surroundings, or majorly us and our chakras. But also they can be created by us with with the function of us being angry and trying to throw something at somebody. There's no demons as such, although there are times when nature spirits will adopt an image that make us look away from them. We would naturally shy away from them. And also astral entities do the same thing to try and distract us. So depending upon how people observe them would depend upon how they would relate to them. But in essence, it's just a distraction medium to make us not observe them or let them carry on with what they're doing without us interacting or affecting the way that they're doing their work. Next question. When Source Entity 1 started creating the true energetic self, all the true energetic cells would be at their very first incarnation or level. Then did the Source Entity 1 incarnate? I'll start again, because I've not understood this. When Source Entity 1 started creating true energetic cells, all the true energetic cells would be at their very first incarnation or level. Then did the Source Entity 1 itself incarnate to expand the evolution of true energetic cells, or were some true energetic cells given a head start? No, though everything was created in equality in terms of experience, apart from the quality of sentience. So in effect, everything was created with a level of understanding, and that understanding was that they had to experience, learn, and evolve to assist in the source's ability to evolve as well, who is assisting in the origin's ability to evolve. So effectively, we all start from zero again, and that includes starting from zero again to a certain level when we go into another evolutionary cycle. Okay, next question. Currently, music is composed in 440 hertz. In the past, it was 432 hertz. Does this difference in frequency have a major impact on our spirituality? No, it's far too low. Our spirituality, even the next level up, for example, is a quantum leap above where we are frequentially. So frequency level 4, the lowest of the astral levels, is significantly higher frequentially. It's well beyond the terahertz or whatever is above terahertz. Basically, it's well above that. It's above anything we've created that we can detect with it. So it doesn't affect us. But think of it this way: any increase in frequency will have a positive effect on us. So if music is created at a slightly higher frequency, which in this instance is only 8 hertz, then it will improve our demeanor in some way. But looking at this, it's the change in from 432 hertz to 440 hertz, logically speaking, is just to create a position that is based upon 10. So it's I think it's just tidying up the frequential range in which things are recorded in, because we're in a digital age now rather than an analog based age. Okay, next one, 6. By listening to Satsanga and reading your books, do we end up downloading aspects of yourself? You download aspects of the content of the book and the frequencies associated with the books. So, and many people have done this. They'll felt the energies, they'll felt the content, they'll felt the instant understanding, sometimes after the book has been used as a doorstop for a number of months. They sometimes get the intuition to be able to read it. So from that perspective, I would suggest that you will get downloads. And I mean, leave yourself open to this, and expect everything and nothing. That's the best way forward. And then whatever comes will come, and it'll be appropriate to what direction you need help in the future. Okay, next one's from Andrew. The origin was faced with the greatest task, that is to understand itself in totality. It only created 12 source entities to aid in the endeavor. That's like me being in construction and decided to build a bridge from the States to England, but only hiring 12 people with me to build it. Such a task would require hundreds of thousands or maybe millions of workers if I wanted to construct a bridge as fast and as well as possible. Yet the origin made only 12, 1 out of a million sources. That is an excellent question. And the only thing that comes to me now is that it wanted to see what happened. It wanted to see if it created something based upon its understanding of self, which failed. The 12 origins experiments, it couldn't recreate itself because it didn't know what itself was really. Didn't know how big its structure was, which I'm finally getting now as a function of the book I'm working on now, which is Beyond the Origin. But as we assist our source entities to experience, learn, and evolve, and that affects the origin, so as we move into the next evolutionary cycle, our true energetic selves will become versions of source entities, and we will become like our true energetic selves. So in effect, what's happening is the origin is allowing it to understand itself in its own way, and it's allowing smaller versions of itself to understand the minute detail in their own way and grow accordingly. And so, although it seems very slow right now, I'm seeing a time when an evolutionary cycle will be faster than the blink of an eye. So, in fact, it will be unmeasurably fast from our perspective. So it's just a matter of gaining momentum, and I'm being told it's a logarithmic scale, and I'm also, there's something always been in the back of my mind for a long time, and that is there actually 12 source entities, or is there 12 times 12 source entities? And I haven't broached that subject yet in this book, but it's towards the end, and I will be. So I hope you'll be a bit patient with me to understand that. So, but thanks for the question. And yes, it's all about the gathering of and the creating of sentience, and the sentience gaining its own quality, and then gaining its own ability to expand its density, its quality, and then create the potential to become source-like or origin-like whilst still being the source or still being origin. Okay, Monan, question 1. With regards to this quote from the Bible, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. And I can't see this. I've got okay. So I've got a pop-up snuck in by the side of the text, and I couldn't see some of it. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, was with God, and the Word was God. Is this a specific word mantra to chant or something else? Please share your viewpoint on this. This is basically saying, from our perspective, that the source was the only sentience associated with the volume of space or energy that its sentience was associated with before it divided itself into countless trillions of true energetic cells to populate half of its own volume of structure. So in effect, it's a way of saying the source was the only sentience within the multiverse and outside of the multiverse in its own structure until later. And then it decided to divide half of its sentience into smaller units of sentience, smaller volumes of sentience, and populate it. So that's basically what he's trying to say there. And it's interesting, it's part of the Bible, because it should be part of all religious, or should I say, historical texts. Okay, good. Okay, question from Tao here. Hi, I'm reading the but I don't understand it. I have to say, Tao, some of the questions and some of the information I didn't understand as I was writing it, but that's the whole point of it, is to get the information out there. Still, I enjoy reading it. Is it that like babies who like to hear mama's voice because they recognize it without understanding the words, that to at some level recognize or understand the One of the things I try to advise people on is that don't try to understand it. There are times when I'm channeling the information and I understand the concept. It's there, it's clear. But can I put it in human terms? No. So I have to sit back and scratch my head and let things happen. And then I'll get an example. Jesus taught parables. The Buddha taught examples. And so did Muhammad. All these different, classical leaders who are showing the way to become masters of ourselves whilst incarnate in lower frequencies of the physical universe understood how to move forwards. But they also said just allow yourself to be by understanding this story about it or this example about it. And so I give examples. And so if you don't understand the text, don't worry, just read it as a story and let it just wash over you. And at some point, you'll come back to a paragraph or a sentence or a chapter, and it'll make sense. So just read it and allow it to be part of you, but don't try to intellectually understand it, because actually, from an intellectual perspective, we are significantly underpowered. So we don't have the processing capability to understand the intellectual side. We can get the feeling of it, which is good, but allow that feeling to come through you, and eventually you may get a level of intellectual understanding. Although what appears to be advanced from what I'm teaching, it's actually probably quite low grade in kindergarten when you go back into the energetic. It's just that where we are right now, we're so low frequency that we don't have the capacity to understand the depth and detail. But by example, we can do, or by absorption, we can do. Okay, next question from Andrew. If suicide is such a detrimental thing to evolution, why does it happen so often? Why don't the guys do a better job steering the incarnate? Why doesn't the higher self decide to use one of the termination junctures beforehand? And if aspects virtually plan out their entire life, wouldn't they see the potential for committing suicide? And at that point, rewrite the life they're designing in a completely new direction? It just doesn't make sense to me that something so detrimental to one's evolution is allowed to occur 1,000 times a day. I agree. It's bizarre. But what I'm picking up is that the people who are committing suicide are souls who thought they could handle the low frequencies and thought they could handle the situations that they've desired to enter into, the experiences within the circumstances in the environment they're in. It's almost like biting off more than we can chew, and it creates a condition where, irrespective of what the guide and helpers do to try and turn them round, they cut off that communication, and they feel that cutting off that communication and ending the particular incarnation, ending their life, is going to be the end of it, and clearly it's not, and it causes a downstream problem with evolutionary death later, because of all the things that they were supposed to do, interact with others, and others who are going to interact with others in the fractalized sense, doesn't happen. So it's the only way I can describe it is the guide and helpers do the best they can, but you can only guide a soul so far whilst they're here, because don't forget we're in a really low frequency here, and it's a bit like us trying to use a modern computer to control an old program. It doesn't work. So although they're doing their best because they're in a higher frequency, what they think is going to work should work, but the information is so slow and so distorted by the time it comes down to the lower frequencies of where we incarnate, that it probably misses the point with the incarnate soul who's considering suicide. So I fully believe what Bob's been picking up, that they try their hardest, but the frequencies are so low here that they can't get the motivation to change direction over to the soul. Next one's from Daniel. Improvement and evolution to a high level versus creation. Is creation or evolution the same thing? How do they work? Is one better than the other? Creation creates the possibility of evolution through interaction, observation, and learning and modification. So it's a way of bettering ourselves through understanding our environment more. And the only way we can understand our environment more is to create a condition that allows us to be challenged, to create a way which we can improve ourselves through challenging ourselves, challenging our environment. So the one creates the other. Creation is a prerequisite to becoming sentient. If an energy is going down the road to sentience by using the Darwinian route to evolution rather than the creative route to evolution, or the division of sentience route forwards to create sentience. Liza's got a question here. There is a fair amount of disinformation in the spiritual community today. For example, we have more than 7 chakras. What is the spiritual purpose of individuals believing in this false information? People trying to position themselves into positions of authority and therefore power over others. The higher up the frequencies we go, we stand more chance of losing chakras than gaining them. We're a soul that becomes able to master the gross physical aspect of the physical universe will potentially move beyond the need to either incarnate fully, or will only choose to incarnate in frequencies that are in the 4th frequency upwards. But a soul that incarnates into a vehicle in the 4th frequency upwards doesn't need to have 3 chakras that are associated with the gross physical, because it's in the 4th frequency. So it'll have a composite chakra that is from the 4th frequency upwards. So you get a 4th frequency chakra, a 5th frequency chakra, 6th and 7th. There are things that are there, such as the next 3 levels that are basically step down function from the higher frequencies to the gross to the body, that allows the soul to enter into the vehicle. That's the 10th, the 9th, and the 8th frequency. And some people see this or misinterpret it as being levels of chakras, which they're not. It's simply a step down function. They may perceive a juncture where the 10th frequency joins the 9th, and the 9th frequency joins the 8th, and the 8th frequency joins the 7th in its association with the creation of the human body. But that's what it is. I believe that's what they're seeing. They're seeing this juncture, this sort of element of difference or connectedness, and that makes them think it's a chakra. On this planet Earth, what are we doing well, and what do we need to improve upon? Are we making some progress? With some people, we're making progress, but at the moment, we're in a bit of a pickle. We're losing our maturity rather quickly, and it's very easy to go downhill from a frequential perspective, but super hard to go uphill. And what's happened is that since 2012, where we're supposed to have had this crescendo, or this thing where we're all supposed to have ascended to the next level collectively, which didn't happen because we do it individually. A lot of spiritual individuals have either lost credibility, or those who are on the fence went on the let's forget this and become the human being side again. And also people start to think that this doesn't matter. I'm not involved with this. I can do what I want to do. And so we started to go down the frequencies and start to become individually and almost collectively immature in everything we do. So
across the world we're having problems right now, but we're going to be in a situation where eventually we'll come out the other side when we start to realize that we can't carry on like this because we're going to end up terminating ourselves. Jack says in the next question, when is your next book to be released? We're probably more likely to do the fourth in the trilogy of World Satsanga books. Ulrich and myself quite laugh about that. It's quite nice to have a book beyond a trilogy, but that's more likely to come out first, probably towards the end of the year. But the book called Beyond the Origin, I'm hoping to finish the text on that by June. And so, with a bit of luck, that'll go to the publisher, Ozark Martin Publishing, by August, and then probably around this time next year, well, probably around June next year, it'll be published. Okay. And we've got 5 minutes left, so I'm going to try and do what I can do with the questions. And Eliza said, as we ascend, will we have more of an ability to communicate with higher frequency beings who are already here? For example, beings in Telos. As we ascend, we not only do we increase our communicative bandwidth, we also increase our ability to experience, learn, and evolve different things at a higher level. So we see things that are in the 4th frequency level. We start to become more connected, therefore telepathic. We start to have more access to our sentience, so we have more intuitive-based responses or clairsentience. We start to be able to hear things more. So we see beyond. We see, hear, and feel beyond the gross physical. So the answer is yes, we will do. So as you work on yourself, you meditate, for example, you start to become able to connect with higher frequency entities and higher frequency environments as well. Andrew says, I don't know what to think when I say to myself, I go on after death, because it seems that the I making this statement is the voice of the ego. It's therefore a disingenuous statement, since the part of me saying I go on is actually the part of me that doesn't. So I feel that when life ends, I actually end also, because though I have intellectual knowledge that I am not the ego is all I've really experienced about myself to be. And it will die when the body dies, for all intents and purposes. Is this an accurate statement? The ego is a temporary personality, as we know, because it's created as a function of the almost totally cut off level of communicative ability, or significantly reduced bandwidth of the soul, or the smaller aspect of sentience projected down from the higher self. But although the ego is what we are now, it's our predominant personality associated with our association with the body, and lack of association with what we really are. When the body dies and we recommune with our true energetic self, that personality doesn't disappear. It just becomes an aspect, a microscopic aspect of the bigger part of our personality, of all the personalities we've had in all of our incarnations, and all the sentient signature we've had as a function of our evolution. So it doesn't actually dissolve totally. It just becomes a minute part of it. So it loses its dominance, and that's basically what happens. Okay. So Daniel said, I think I'll just about be able to answer this question before we finish the time, because it's 2 minutes 40. The last Satsanga, you mentioned many souls want to come to Earth as opposed to visiting other source entity realms. Why is that? Is it a better place, or is it the most challenging in the multiverse? I often fluctuate between great joy and happiness by being here, and have a slight feeling of depression and difficulty. Is this normal? If these are normal. We come here because we've got individualized free will. And in this particular frequency within the physical universe, the Earth is the only place. And you can see why it's the only place, because of the different types of trouble we can get ourselves into by having individual free will, rather than the ability to think about, how does my action affect others, and is my action affecting others in a detrimental way? So that's why we come here, because we have the chance of evolving faster. In others' question, it was quite relevant, because we evolve significantly faster by having individualized free will, and having to learn to navigate through low frequency environments in an almost isolated case, than what we do if we're collectively connected, or we're not in fact incarnate. So it's quite usual to feel a bit of depression and a bit of joy as well. Okay, another one from Daniel. Are all source entities of the same energy and their true creations? their true energetic selves the same, or how do they differ? The concept of a true energetic self is common. It's a smaller volume of sentience from a larger volume of sentience. How the source entity or another source entity allows that sentience to divide itself into different parts is up to that source entity, but it would still be potentially, shall I say, associated with the structure that is part of everything, which is based upon the power of 12.
Question from Ola. Previously, you said the Bible reference to the word is the sound. There's a difference between the word being and the resonant base resonant frequency, the background of everything, of all the multiverse, of the source, of the space that these sources occupy within the origin and the origin itself. The word in that context was referring to source or God, whereas the word in terms of the word for everything that is beyond God is the sound, which is the base resonant frequency of everything, in fact, including the origin as well. And last question is from Daniel. Capillary action, always being pulled or pushed, probably both. Is this a way to explain or understand growth? Yes, everything in the gross physical, and in fact in the physical universe, is based upon yin and yang, ups and down, forwards and backwards, duality basically. So we have to experience everything and the graduations in between those. So in that instance, that is the way to understand growth, is we're experiencing everything. We're experiencing the good, the bad, the joy, the sorrow, the wonder, the understanding, the horror, the delight, and all the graduations in between. So understanding growth is that we have to experience everything. And if it's being pushed or pulled and both, then that's the way to understand it. Okay, well, we have to finish now. So thank you very much for your questions. And I hope that I've answered them for you. Namaste to you all. Now it's time for the meditation. Welcome to the meditation side of this World Satsanga on January 2024. And what we're going to do now is to meditate upon the honor of having individualized free will in this particular incarnation and the maturity associated with having such an honor and the effect we can have on others. So let's quieten ourselves down, close our eyes, sit either cross-legged on the floor if you can, or if you're sitting in a chair, make sure it's a straight-backed chair with your feet flat on the ground, the small of your back in the 90-degree aspect where the seat and the back come together, your back straight, your neck straight, your eyes closed with your closed eye vision gently focused on the origin of the spiritual or third eye, which is in between the eyebrows and above the bridge of the nose. And of course, your hands are palm uppermost on your upper thighs, on the area of the upper thighs where the legs meet the lower body. And just sink into yourself and realize that even your thoughts are individual. Your ability to move into meditation is a function of individualized free will. You have a choice and you make the choice. You have a decision and you make the decision. You can choose to accept somebody else's decision for you or reject somebody else's decision for you. You can choose to accept somebody's authority or reject somebody's authority. in a way that allows us to evolve because we're choosing the way that is positive. It's creating the potential for others to benefit. We're not working in a way which is beneficial to ourselves only. We're not being selfish, although we could classify the potential to be selfish in service of others and in considering how we think, behave, and act and how it might affect others. So having individualized free will is about choosing the mature thought process, the mature behavior, and the mature action, resisting the desire to fight back, to be the best person, to be right. Let others be right if they want to be right, even though you may know that they are wrong. Accept that you can be wrong as well. With our limited ability to connect with the greater reality here, because we're in low frequencies, we are often wrong because we don't take the time to investigate the truth behind what we may be discussing or understanding. So again, individualized free will leads us to the potential of mature thought in terms of allowing ourselves to be properly educated. And in being properly educated, we give a mature response based upon knowledge, not guesswork or preference or some method of one-upmanship. Choose the optimal path every time. Give yourself a chance to consider what's being asked of you, what you need to do, how you need to respond, where you can be of service, where you shouldn't be of service. And choose the route that creates the possibility not only of you evolving, but those around you evolving as well. And the environment being affected with positive frequency as well, higher frequency as well. Free will is an absolute honor. It's a gift above all others. Not only are we individualized sentience, but we've got individualized thought processes, behaviors, and actions. With our individualized free will, we have the capability of evolving as fast as we can, as deep as we want to be, with the right level of quality. So why do we need to beat around the bush? Experience the same things multiple times because we get the answer wrong or the reaction wrong, or create a circumstance above and beyond what it should be, making mountains out of molehills. Why not give yourself a few moments to get to the way we need to respond, the right way to respond? The mature thought process associated with individualized free will reflects upon how they've interacted with others, recognizes that, in essence, as a function of the structure of sentience, that eventually we all become one with Source. We're still linked to Source in some small way, and so therefore we are Source. And therefore everybody is us. So if we're one with Source and everybody else is one with Source, then everybody else is us. And we are them. So why not behave in the mature way that recognizes this and behave in a way that shows good example. Choose the right way. Give yourself time to choose the right way. Don't respond instantaneously and choose the wrong way. This doesn't mean that you roll over and play dead to somebody. You can still justify your position, but know when to stop or move away or walk away from a particular discussion, which may end up being an argument. Because there are times when you're not going to win the argument. You're not going to win the dialogue because the other individual is not using their individualized free will maturely. So it's best to, in that instance, back down knowing that you're right and allow the others to not accrue any lower frequency associated with argument, which is karmic, by the perpetuation of such dialogue. So just consider these words for a few moments. Just recognize that maturity of thought, behavior, and action is a function of using individualized free will in its optimal way. Every one of us, irrespective of what we're doing on this planet, has been honored, blessed with individualized free will. Let's not waste it. You can contemplate these words for as long as you want. You can use this as a reminder when you feel frustrated or when you feel that choosing the right path is too hard. Just let it sink into you for a moment and then we'll finish the meditation. So slowly come back into the room, slowly open your eyes and relax. Take a drink of water to help ground you and just contemplate those words on becoming able to use your individualized free will in a mature way. Namaste to you all, and Source's love to you all. Did you see the aliens in Crete?